My name is John DeLamater, and I'm a professor here in the Sociology department, and I've been teaching the human sexuality course for about 25 years. So, and I also am co-author of a human sexuality textbook, and so we have a whole chapters on adult relationships, and so one of the relationships that we talk about is polyamory. I think it's interesting because, you know, most of the concern in our society has always been about extramarital sex. And I've often thought, you know, if the reason for being concerned is that you want to preserve established relationships, then falling in love with somebody else may be more threatening to an established relationship than having sex with somebody else. You know, so I think it's interesting that we focus our attention on extra relationship sex, but we've overlooked kind of falling in love with somebody outside the established relationship. And of course that's what polyamory is. And some polyamorous couples in fact say that they don't engage in sexual activity with each other, they just love each other. Their interest in polyamorous relationships grows out of the belief that there's no one person that can satisfy all your needs, right? And so you may be the kind of person who really enjoys obscure movies, you know, but you also enjoy football, and you also enjoy sex, and you also enjoy Italian cooking, right? And probably you're not going to find one person who likes all four of those things, but you might find one person that really shares your interest in old movies and loves to travel all over the country with you, seeing old movies, you know, and so that becomes something that the two of you share together. Whereas no one person could meet all your needs. By establishing long-term relationships with two or three people, you can get all those different needs met. I think they're associated with polygamous, yeah, because that's our cultural category for people who have more than one romantic or committed partner, right? And some of the polyamorous couples that have gotten some publicity have been in Colorado, right? And so anybody who doesn't live in Colorado, Utah says, well, that's all. They're out there with those other folks, right? So I think that's another thing, is the geographic continuity. But yeah, I mean, I'm sure they're confused with that, because that's the other thing where we see groups of people, groups of adults living together in long-term relationships. My guess is that they sort of discover that they're polyamorous by virtue of circumstances. There's been some research, for example, on, and there's an ongoing study by Lisa Diamond of women where she looks at their relationships and how they describe themselves over time. And so she started out when these women were 18, most of them described themselves as lesbian or bisexual. Well, now some of them are heterosexually married. And what happened was, it wasn't that they decided they were heterosexual, they fell in love with this guy, and they started having a relationship with him and decided to get married, okay? And that's also been researched years ago from the other direction. Heterosexuals who become lesbian or gay as adults would say, well, I had this coworker, you know, and we just got more and more involved with each other, and suddenly we were in bed having sex, and I never thought I'd have sex with another woman, but there I was. And I'm going to bet that polyamory comes about in that same way, that you maybe with a coworker, you know, and maybe two couples where all four people kind of really hit it off and begin to like to spend time together, and at some point somebody says, hey, we ought to all kind of move in together or get adjacent houses. I guess some polyamorous groups do that. And others will all live in one big house or one big residential facility. It's very rare, and so most people are never going to come in contact with either one. And so what people know is just what they see in the media, you know, and if they see in the media a bunch of folks living together, that's sort of, they're just going to classify those, I think, in pretty much the same category. And it would take some probably first-hand experience and some instruction maybe on the differences. I mean, you probably have gone to a couple of these websites, you know, and you may have seen they go to great lengths to specify exactly what are and aren't included in polyamorous relationships, and that, you know, some of them have quite elaborate philosophies behind it and stuff like that. I don't think most people are ever going to pick up to that degree information about it and come to distinguish it in that way, unless it becomes much more widespread. But I don't see that happening either, because I think marriage is still alive and well. And so I think that means that people are inevitably going to have a more negative view of almost any kind of alternative relationship form, whether it's polygamy or polyamory or swinging or whatever.